Welcome to Happy Invasion of Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast. Can you guess which story we're doing this time? In which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story, try to accentuate the positive and make facts and observations, and guess what my special guest's favourite thing about each instalment might be.
Hello, Toby. As you can see, I'm recording this urgent message from Gallifrey. For the people from your podcast who don't know me, I am Nev Fountain. I am a writer of many things. I'm mainly known for comedy because I contribute to Private Eye and Dead Ringers. And I do write some murder mystery books with a science fiction twist. The story I want you to watch, Toby, is set on Gallifrey and it is called The Invasion of Time.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this edition of Happy Times and Places. And it's happy times with the Time Lords, it's the happy invasion of times. I hope you're having a happy invasion of time. I could have had a happier invasion of time had I got over myself a little bit in the previous instalment and not been at pains to describe in too much detail why I had a slight issue with this story when so often I revisit stories and go into them with the positive frame of mind that this particular broadcast requires, and that makes me engage in a level that means I concentrate on the jolly bits. But I think I wanted to lay the foundations, which is annoying because actually the last time I did watch this with my sort of critical thinking hat on was when I did it for Running Through Corridors, and I remember enjoying episodes 1 and 4 particularly, so I should have just taken it at face value. But anyway, let us see if the denizens of Patreonville have decided to take me to task for my attitude to episode 1 of The Invasion of Time in this podcast, which is, of course, here to celebrate Doctor Who for what it is, not for what it isn't, or for what it may have done to us in the past. Anthony Carroll was the first person to respond, and he says, another great listen. Thank you, Anthony. A strange story that I don't mind watching occasionally. Maybe should have been a 4-parter with just Sontarans. Has got flaws. The Vardens are the dullest aliens in Doctor Who. TARDIS chase is a bit laborious, and Leela exit abysmal. Ooh, spoilers, we're not going there yet, Anthony. But love Stuart Fell leap. We've got that to look forward to later. Not later today, in a later instalment. So 7 out of 10, but could have been better. 7 out of 10 is not a bad score. Joel Ahrens from the other side of the world, from the one I am sitting on. So it's dark here. He's probably sunbathing. Joel says, everyone probably has 1 or 10 stories that are unloved but loved by them. Guilty pleasures? I'm not sure I believe in the term. I certainly don't feel guilty loving The Invasion of Time. I think the setup is brilliant, and whilst the Vardens are not well realised or acted, this is one that I loved as a child when it went out, and for all its faults, I still love now. For me, the idea of the infinite space of the TARDIS, only hinted at before now, was brilliant. And the balls to have Tom's Doctor appear to have gone to the baddest side is inspired. Wasn't it Terence Dicks who said when writing the first draft of the 5 Doctors that Tom's Doctor would be the only one you could believe might go bad? This certainly shows it. I love this story beyond the telling of it. Oh, nicely put, Joel. And I do think Terence Dicks is correct in that. There's Troughton has a dark side, sure, and both Troughton and Pertwee both have occasion, don't they, to pretend that they've joined the bad guys. Pertwee does it obviously in Claws of Axos, and Troughton does it too. But I think as a viewer, you're still pretty much, you're still pretty much. Whereas Tom Baker, I think you could entertain the idea that he'd actually taken a step to the dark side. Frank Shale says, Nev Fountain, it's Nev, of course, who is the instigator of this process and the champion of The Invasion of Time, whose choices I will be hearing at the end of every episode. Nev Fountain is clearly a man of great taste and discernment, isn't he just? Though not the peak of accomplished Who for me, this is a story, says Frank, I love deeply. Since getting the book from the library when it came out, I have very vague memories of the original TX, Sontarans in a corridor or bashing the door down. I got a bootleg, then later made a better copy from a friend's bootleg, recorded it twice off UK Gold, was given the official VHS as a present, and had also brought it myself, got the DV, got the Blu-ray, and kept them all. Can't bear to part with any. Comfort Who of the highest order, and I'll always watch when someone puts it on. I was delighted when Arnott showed up as the new sheriff in The Adventures of Robin Hood this year on Talking Pictures TV in an episode with the fellow Barusa, Philip Latham. I was thinking, John Arnott turned up in a current Robin Hood. Oh no, Talking Pictures TV. I love we talk about Talking Pictures TV, things turning up on Talking Pictures TV as though they're sort of modern showings. You know, it's not something plucked from the archive. It's what's on the telly now. But that's understandable. Talking Pictures TV is very much a comfort blanket, and I like the fact if it hoodwinks us for a moment to go, oh, this is on your actual telly. I saw the Stone tape on it the other day, breaking for adverts and stuff. It's like, oh no, I'm not watching this on DVD. This is actually this is on the box right now. And I love the idea that somebody might stumble across something that I know and love, and they might see it for the first time. Frank Shales, back again. Frank, oh, this is immediately Frank again. This was early on in the classic show's unfortunate trope of having to have a traitor on Gallifrey every single time, because what else can you do with them? But at least it's the Doctor who is treacherous, making it the best of the bunch. Funny how so many actors from the massacre are in this story. Then next time, of course, we get the sea beggar himself as Barusa. Yes, because we have Reginald Jessup and Christopher Tranchell here, and yes, Leonard Sachs when Arc of Infinity needs a new Barusa. Mr. M.L. Dunstan says, loved listening to this today. Oh, thanks, Mr. M.L. Dunstan. Not the best story, but very enjoyable indeed. It is a shame about some aspects of the production. It does look like Tom Baker can't be bothered attitude, but there are some great actors in this story. Milton Johns is fabulous. The only really sad thing is that Leela has gone to me. That Leela has gone. To me, she was the best companion. She hasn't gone yet. We've still got 5 more episodes of her, Mr. M.L. Dunstan. So John Hall comes in and says, Nev Fountain's Mad King comment has particular resident for we colonials these days. So refer to episode 1. Nev made some very interesting observations about the Doctor doing the Mad King thing. And John Hall is mentioning we colonials because he is from the other side of the pond. John says, as we have one ourselves who's literally been destroying the White House. Oh, are we getting a bit political now? So John is alluding to his president, while its custodians look on in despair and barely disguise disdain, much like Barusa regards the Doctor in this part of the story. Sadly, this mad would-be king isn't playing a clever and dangerous long game like the Doctor is. He's the genuine article, and the Kellners of this administration simply enable him while consolidating their own power, much like the Castellan will do here. Well, you've made us very relevant and up-to-date there, John. Other views are available, but Nev Fountain says, and don't forget the Doctor only stood for president to escape the clutches of the law. That's true. He invoked Article 17 in The Deadly Assassin, and it's a legal technicality. No, sir, a legal right. I love all of that stuff. Anyway, we're not doing The Deadly Assassin, but yes, that's true, Nev. And John comes back and says, indeed, good Lord, does that mean Tom Baker is the Donald Trump of doctors? Nev Fountain says, in fact, Trump seems to be sticking very closely to the Invasion of Time playbook, decorating his office in a mad style, pushing out competent colleagues in favour of grovelling toadies, and sending out ICE, the infantry of the Chancellor-elect, to throw out undesirables. Can we but hope that the last decade is but a ruse by Trump to baffle the Vardens? Ah, well, as soon as the tinfoil starts to appear at various spots throughout the world, we'll know that that's what it all was. Frank Shell says, who are the custodians? They seem to be as hands-off as the Guardians of Time. Sorry, jumping ahead one story. Yes, Frank, yes. You're diluting the political satire, Frank. So that's That was a lovely exchange there between John and Nev that escalated. John's back again saying, as an American Doctor Who viewer since the late 1970s, I've a conflicted relationship with the Invasion of Time. You see, back in those days, my local PBS station, WGBH Channel 2 in Boston, showed seasons 12 to 15 every weeknight at 7 p.m. for years and years, and I watched these episodes to the point where they were almost seared onto the inside of my skull. As a kid, I couldn't appreciate the tax satire of the Sunmakers, and Underworld bored me silly, so the drawn-out antics of the Invasion of Time were a welcome respite to that 8-episode patch of dullness. But that also meant that Leela and K9 were leaving, and even then I never understood what Leela saw in that drip android. Additionally, it meant the time loop would reset to robot, and the cycle would continue again and again until WGBH finally bought seasons 16 to 18 in 1983. Apologies for the long-winded ramble through my Doctor Who youth, but I wanted to show that Toby's not the only fan with complicated memories of this tale. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. You never have to apologise for any contribution here in the comments. They always give us food for thought, and you know, the differences and similarities of our experiences with Doctor Who are what bind us, no matter when or where we are from. Jason Thompson chimes in now with, I absolutely love the Invasion of Time. I think my favourite thing in every episode is Louise Jameson, who was just amazing throughout. She's always bringing something extra to the part beyond what's in the script. Her choices in delivery, facial expressions, movements, everything just make it impossible not to watch her any time she is on screen. Not only that, but Leela in this story is wonderful in the way she reacts to her situation. The Doctor is being awful to her, and yet she never loses her absolute faith in him. Also, I really like the unusual low-angle shots inside the TARDIS in this story. I only found out quite recently this was because the set had to be rigged up on location, so didn't have the usual space of a BBC studio, but it works really well, and I sometimes wish more stories had been a bit more creative with the angles used in the TARDIS scenes. Looking ahead to part 2, I don't know what it is about it, but every time I watch it, the moment Rodan declares, the transduction barrier has failed, gives me chills. In a story that is chock full of comic or silly moments like Andrew chewing on a jelly baby as he orders his men to follow him, this suddenly feels big and significant. Frank Shale says, interestingly, I think the console room itself was recorded in studio, not at the hospital, so it's very good direction, and they made it look different somehow to sort of fit in with the corridor shots. Jason comes back. Well then, perhaps I stand corrected. Right, boys, you've put me on a mission now, because I'm not sure which one of you is right. I'm sure I saw some sources saying the control room was rigged up on location, but I've also seen some saying they were done in studio. Certainly, the early episode console room scenes look very cramped, and I wondered if the low angles were to conceal that. I await a definitive answer, but either way, the unusual angles make the early console room scenes stand out. I'll find you a definitive answer, boys. But not before I've spoken to everybody else. Peter the Speaker says, I would only say this in a safe space to avoid ridicule, but I thought for many years Leonard Rossiter had starred in Doctor Who. Turns out it was actually Milton Johns. Well, I can see they have a similar sort of diction and sort of jawline, and no, I can see why you might mistake the great Rossiter for the great Johns and vice versa. Oh, imagine, says Paul. Begs a question, was Rossiter ever approached for a role in Doctor Who? I suspect I'm in the right place for a good answer. One for the AMA, says Peter the Speaker. That was a good chance for me to plug the Patreon page where there are monthly Ask Me Anythings, where I often get asked questions about actors. But I'll answer this one here. As far as I know, Leonard Rossiter was never approached for a role in Doctor Who. I suspect probably because they knew the answer that it wouldn't be his cup of tea, but he's worth looking at if you want to see him with his genre hat on. Do watch Nigel Neal's play The Year of the Sex Olympics, in which he is excellent and which is a superb piece of work. Garth Maker says, have been doing some digging and I'm pretty sure I first saw this in the Omnibus repeat on ABC TV in 1990. In one of the inexplicable mysteries of the universe, I absolutely fell in love with this story on first watch and have loved it ever since. It might have helped seeing it all in one go, so I got to experience the Ep4 cliffhanger twist straight away. My recollection is that at no point did I ever believe that the Doctor had truly gone bad. The highlight for me is the exploration of the TARDIS interior. I think the fact that it is so clearly an old hospital actually made it more appealing. A few years later, we went on a school trip to a country town that had an abandoned hospital. I vividly recall the feeling of this story as I was exploring the rather creepy building. Amazing the things we can link to Doctor Who. Absolutely, yes. What to most people would be an abandoned hospital old building, we have another way of anchoring that in our thoughts and approaching it as an experience. Adam Parkin says, The Invasion of Time is a story I first discovered through the Target novelisation, with a fantastic cog design on the cover. When I later saw the story for the first time in the late 90s, taped off UK TV Gold by my uncle, I was disappointed by the visuals, keeping this spoiler-free just in case. However, I came back to it on DVD around Christmas 2011 and I bloody loved it. The story is what really appeals to me, with the idea of the Doctor gone bad and the politics of Gallifrey and the production team doing what they could and pushing the budget to its limits. The Unquest says, I remember adoring this episode as a child. Little disappointing when I go back now. Oh, if we could only go back to childish things, The Unquest, when you were merely a quest waiting to be undone. Paul Dunn, talking of Duns, Paul Dunn says, one of my guilty pleasures. I love this one. Tom Baker gives an amazing performance as the treacherous Doctor. It gets sillier as it goes on, and love the Sontarans in this despite their eye makeup making them look like they've had a night out on the piss. And with that, Paul Dunn is done. It's interesting, though, that a lot of people are looking to much further forward in the story. This doesn't normally happen. I have to say, when we're looking at it episode by episode, you usually tell me about episode 1 and maybe give me a hint as to episode 2. But the headlines are much further ahead. Mark Trevor Owen says, this is going to be interesting for me. The Invasion of Time is my least favourite Tom Baker story. Probably my least favourite of the 1970s. Maintaining the chirpy approach of Happy Times and Places will be stimulating. I'll start by commending John Arnott's gracious performance, and Louise Jameson's already proven skill at making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and pretending I can't see the inflatable cushions and ping-pong ball communicators. Well, that's part of it, isn't it? Mark, we can always be positive about the ones that we absolutely love. And as I say, I did have a bit of a failure, I thought, with episode 1, and I like a lot about episode 1. So I am going to try to tune in and accentuate the positive. Let's see how I do. Ashley Knight says, 2 notes. For those above, there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. If you like something, you like something. Never be ashamed of that. That is a good point, Ashley. And the post-credits, you do those, Toby, for those of us who believe in listening right to the end. I knew you'd never let me down, Ashley, but I'm not sure if it might not just be you. But anyway, let's see. Jasper says, I first watched this story a few months ago, and my memory of it is already quite clouded by the last 2 minutes of the final episode. Won't be too specific, since I don't think you mentioned that. However, yesterday I was looking through a folder of GIFs and stumbled upon one of a Sontaran galloping around the side of a swimming pool, and suddenly I'm looking forward to this story again. It's amazing how somebody tripping over can be the highlight of a Doctor Who story. Shane Plays, final comment of this bunch. Shane Plays says, I don't really mind it, but I also kind of hate it. What a great summary of the experience of fandom, Toby. I don't know that I love this story, but I do love all the Gallifreyan lore dump, as well as all of the inside the TARDIS romping about. Not so much for the quality of the various sets and locations themselves, but for the statement it makes about how large the TARDIS is, when we usually see only the control room. It's sad for me due to the departure of Leela, one of my favourite companions. And lest I forget, bring on the warrior space potatoes. Well, with that, shall we set about watching it? I'm going to watch it on BBC iPlayer. I'm going to be watching alongside Nev Fountain, who will be choosing his favourite thing, and then I will see what that is after I've chosen my favourite thing, and the hope is that we will be in accord. Oh, but we have a very late entrance for comments just in before we have to start rolling. So rather like the Invasion of Time, this one might be slightly frayed round the edges. But David Gillespie Pratt has arrived on location with the wrong mask to say, the Invasion of Time is a funny one. I'm looking forward to seeing how the next 5 commentaries unfold. The first part has a lot going for it, including some fabulous Dudley Simpson music and excellent model work. But, and please don't lynch me for this, is this a bad performance from Tom Baker? We love him, and he's a legend, of course. But there are points in this episode where he seems to be not even trying. Perhaps that was an acting choice to try to show that the Doctor wasn't himself or something. But if it was a choice, I'm not sure it was the right one. Yeah, this is where I struggle, David, because I can see that sort of detachedness might be a suggestion that, the Doctor is mentally absenting himself from proceedings, and the actor is trying to show a certain coldness and a certain detachment. But I'm not sure if Tom Baker is not just going, well, yeah, I can do that, but just not doing anything. And because we know him, we know that he might have done that. And that's sometimes, I think, the problem with knowing too much about the show, is that we will make that assumption about Tom Baker where we might not about another actor. Or would we? I don't know. But I'm in two minds, and I certainly think he is an actor who's prone to misbehaviour, and I wouldn't put it past him to go, well, I just won't do anything. And if a director might say, Tom, are you... Well, I'm being detached. I'm from Gallifrey and the constellation of Castorburus. But who knows? Anyway, let's see how he does in episode 2 of The Invasion of Time. And I am going to press play in 3, 2, 1. So here we are. Episode 2 of The Invasion of Time, which, as I say, was headline news for me. When I was a youngster, it was on the forthcoming Target books, or Target books also available, and I just thought it sounded really exciting, The Invasion of Time, and it had Sontarans in it. I didn't realise that was a big spoiler, and one of the big spoilers. I also didn't realise that David Agnew was a pseudonym. It always reminds me of Jonathan Agnew, who was a cricketer when I was a lad and is now the BBC's chief cricket correspondent and lead commentator on Test Match Special, which is another of my great joys in life. I do like the Doctor's robes here. There's something about being tall, isn't there, which means you can carry stuff off, and obviously that thing round his neck is also in The Deadly Assassin. There is a lot of continuity betwixt The Deadly Assassin and this. Leela's hair is slightly different, isn't it, in this one compared to the others? Looks like she's had a sort of blow dry. I'm sure she had a blow dry every day, but do you know what I mean? It seems, dare I use the word bouffant? So here we go. Yes, this is Charles Morgan here. Dennis Edwards. Dennis Edwards pops up in all sorts of things till quite late. He was one of those actors that always seems fairly old. And yes, I've been watching The Abominable Snowmen recently, so I've been looking at Charles Morgan, who is always referred to as Songtsen, but is spelled in the credits as Songsten. And I keep meaning to go to the scripts and check, but anyway, because I know obviously Terence Dicks changed the names between the TV version and the book, because the TV version has used real people's names. But why am I talking about The Abominable Snowmen when I should be talking about the slightly sibilant Dennis Edwards, who I always think is only in a couple of episodes of this, but he actually has quite a lot to do there. It's a decent part. And did I say he'd written to the production to say, I've never done a Doctor Who, I should be in one, and then he adds a note to the bottom saying, actually, I think I did do one a long time ago. And obviously the Romans, the Romans was, only 10 years prior to this, and yet probably if I'd come across him in the 1990s, I'd have said, do you remember being in the Romans? Couldn't remember being in the Romans in the late 1970s. I do. There's a joke there, isn't there, about Gomer? Oh, he is young. So they're playing a little bit with the idea of Time Lords and and the fact that they can regenerate. So they're different. It's for me, for the sake of the joke, it's probably not worth going into that, because then it gets very complicated. How does regeneration work? If somebody regenerates, like with the General, when Stephen Moffat did that trick to transform a middle-aged white guy into a woman of colour, to sort of go, yeah, you see, we can do modern things with the regeneration and stuff like that. You go, yeah, I can see what you're doing there, but it does then make you go, so is this person still Do they still have the same job? Because we know when the Doctor regenerates, the Doctor changes. Do you go back to square one when you regenerate? If you're an older, venerable person who regenerates into a younger one, you keep that wisdom, but you don't have the older person's personality. So do you keep the same job? Do you keep the same badge of office? And I would argue that it's probably best not to go there. It's fine to go there out in the great wide world, but within Gallifrey itself, to start sort of messing about with it, a bit like time travel within the show, you have to play very carefully. And I think sometimes it's not worth it for a joke. And that joke about Goma being young is kind of them messing about with the idea that, well, yeah, he can be a young Time Lord, but an old man. So I think this is Christopher Christou as this week's speaking guard, because he'll be in all of the episodes, but he'll just get a credit when he gets a line, as happens with, I think, Michael Harley next week and Eric Dano the following week, where somebody is plucked from the ensemble of guards to be given a line. He's not great, Christopher Christou, but they've decided. And I know the guards are a bit hapless in The Deadly Assassin, but they don't look tatty. They look really good. Whereas, I wonder if it's because people have inherited costumes as well. I don't know. But there's something in the way that the guards run slightly clumsily and bump into people that means that Gallifrey is becoming a world of comedy stooges, which I don't think, even though, because Hilrid is, I mean, there's a whole running joke about Hilrid in The Deadly Assassin being hopeless, but it seems like that's organic to the piece and the drama, and he's not played as a klutz. He's played as somebody who's absolutely doing his job to the best of his ability. Whereas this, there's just a little bit of Keystone Cops about it. And you can see, again, why when a show doesn't quite have the budget it needs to have, and when it might be that the script needs a bit of livening up, people are going, well, why don't I do a bit of this? And why don't we have fun with that? And it's a way, and Doctor Who would be nowhere without the fun. But it perplexes me sometimes how I accept certain types of fun and I don't accept others. And of course, comedy is all about taste. But I would look down upon the sort of klutziness here, and Chris Transwell's choices here do mean it's a slight send-up. It's funny because Andred often gets written up as being rather sort of dull and wet. That's not what I've been getting so far. And actually, when I first watched this, I rather liked seeing somebody squaring up to Tom Baker and matching him with the funnies, because it was a bit of a revelation to me that people were doing a little bit of a nod and a wink. I liked things being a little bit meta and Doctor Who being a little bit sort of sarky with itself. Whereas as I've got older, I sort of respect that a little bit less, because I kind of think, well, no, your job in this is to make it real, and you can do the funnies, but it's easy to be funny. It is. It's easy to be funny. It's hard to be the wrong kind of funny. You can get a laugh just from, and even that, the cough is like, in certain dramas, guards don't cough, but these are tatty guards. Now, it's a useful cough because it tells the Doctor that there's somebody behind the door. But it's because they've been tatty guards thus far. Oh, and this is the scene, isn't it, where he... Oh, yes. So here's a bit of sort of comedy business. He says, good man, doesn't he? Yeah, which... Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, except I kind of hate it. And I like Chris Transwell. I think he's working very hard with a part that there's not a lot to. And here's Tom Baker breaking the fourth wall, and even the guards are looking at each other, shaking their head as if to say, why have you just broken the fourth wall, Doctor Who? How do we feel about that? I mean, Peter Capaldi has done it, hasn't he? But in a very serious way. And should Doctor Who be able to break form? I don't know. see, we sort of ignore the fact that the Doctor does it in the Christmas episode because that's a Christmas episode in the Feast of Stephen. And I think it's because what we know about Tom Baker and how he misbehaved with Graham Williams, that we kind of go, well, we know that you're kind of taking the piss a little bit. So I don't know how I feel about it, because I love Tom Baker. I love the fact that we have such a powerful presence and such an effortlessly witty, interesting, watchable, mercurial, strange person. But it's a wayward talent, and I think Tom Baker is a genius. And the problem with geniuses is that they can be difficult. And you can't rein in genius, but actually it's better when you do. I think Tom Baker under Philip Hinchcliffe is better than Tom Baker under Graham Williams. And maybe it's a combination of the fact he's doing it whilst the production's a bit. And that I don't quite understand. That's not a voice print, is it? It's a code. It's a vocal code. Whereas, I think if you were doing that now, you'd actually have the Doctor sort of cup his mouth and do Barusa's voice, because we've had a precedent for the Doctor. He imitates the toy maker, doesn't he, and all of that. That he gets to open the door because it's Barusa's voice print, and he manages to mimic that. I mean, it just goes to show that the voice print is less good than a fingerprint or an iris scanner. So it begs the question: why didn't Barusa use a fingerprint or an iris scanner? Because then the Doctor wouldn't have been able to get out, but he can with a voice print. Isn't Clara in this bit? Clara appears down one of these corridors, doesn't she, in some very badly filmized moments later on, many years later, in a manner that nobody making this could ever have predicted. I love Milton Johns. He is doing this gorgeous. He's got a ping pong ball to his ear, and he's being sly and calculating and poised, and he's doing it so. He does so much yet so little. There's so much acting going on there, but it's sort of coming from within him. I love Milton Johns. I think he's one of the great Doctor Who actors, and such a great servant to British television. He's also an absolute gent, and turned up to the Android Invasion commentary in a 3-piece suit with a matching tie and pocket square. See, that's all a bit, the guards are comedy guards, and that I'm with him. And it's all fun. And it depends what you want out of Doctor Who. Doctor Who is a children's programme. So it should have license to be sort of funny for the kids. But sometimes I think they go, it's funny for the kids, so let's send it up for the adults. And I always say it should be suitable for children, but not written down to children. And I believe that about the performances as well. It should never be, it's for kids. We'll do this, but let's just make sure we don't make it unsuitable for kids. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should get over myself and it's a kids' show and I should just loosen up and watch it. I am prepared to accept that. I would be interested to know what the viewers think. I've had a mixed reception in the comments so far. And as I say, I am prepared. I don't necessarily always like myself for the opinions I have. Now, here we are in the TARDIS, and it was suggested by Jason Thompson, who's a very smart fella, that these scenes were recorded on location. But I don't think they were. I think they were done at TC6, along with the scenes in the Panopticon. There was only one set of studio days, and that was the scenes in the Panopticon, in the President's Chamber, and the TARDIS control room. So not on location. So therefore, the shooting of it is not as a result of practical needs. Cipher indent key. See, all of this phraseology is somebody has got the Deadly Assassin scripts out of storage, because there are so many sort of quotes and bits of phraseology and equipment references that show that somebody's really gone and done their homework, which is interesting to note that, because continuity starts to take over the show much later than this. But at this point, apart from going, oh, the Daleks this, or there's a slight reference here, the show doesn't get massively, well, I suppose the unit years do, but by dint of the fact they're all sort of set in the same place. So Planet of Spiders invoking Joe Grant and what happened in the Green Death and the stuff with Mike Yates, I suppose, is because it's still part of the same setup of the show. But in season 15, the Doctor's been travelling in time and space. We have, of course, had a reference at the beginning of the season to the Sontarans because we got the Rutans in. But how the show has changed between Horror of Fang Rock and this. I like, actually, Tom Baker's performance with K9 here. And I like the shooting of this. He's got down on the floor to have a chat with K9. That's... I actually enjoyed that exchange, I thought. And, of course, because he's acting to a prop. And you have to keep it absolutely real. Although he does have that little ghost of a smile that he does when he finishes. But that's because the Doctor is amused with his own interaction with K9. It's not Tom Baker winking to the audience. And all of this, holding K9's gaze and, nearly touching his nose and holding the finger up to say, oi, this is all top class making a prop live acting. So I'm gonna give Tom Baker credit for that. I have to say I hate these plastic chairs. I think this corridor set here that Leela is in might be one of the worst pieces of design there's ever been in Doctor Who. I'm sorry, Barbara Gosnold, because she did truly madly deeply and some quite extraordinary things and has had a brilliant career. But I think some of the design on Gallifrey is utterly ghastly. And this is the same set, isn't it, as the one that Andred and Kelner are in. And here we have Rodan, not the flying Screech Beast, but the actress Hilary Ryan, who for ages didn't play ball. She's not on the DVD. She wasn't even on the Blu-ray. But then shortly after the Blu-ray came out, I'd found her on Facebook ages ago, and I sometimes spend an evening doing that. I'll look people up, then I'll find their daughters, and I found her daughters, and then I backtracked and found her, and she hasn't got much of a Facebook presence, but her kids have. So I found exactly who she is, where she is, what she looks like, and then I just noticed that, I think just for fun, really. I think I was just looking around, and I've done it a couple of times because I did it once for my own pleasure, and then I think my friend Johnny said, "Do you know whatever happened to Hilary Ryan?" And was like, "Yeah, I tracked her down a couple of years ago." So then I checked my working, and I thought for a while she'd gone off Facebook, but she hadn't. So I basically did, because I don't save any of this stuff, I basically did the whole thing all over again, and it gradually came back to me. And then at around that time, I think Phantom Films got her for a signing, and Doctor Who magazine got her for an interview. And then I kind of go, oh, well, everybody else has sorted that out now, so my work here is done. But, I had... She married into good stock. She married somebody very well-to-do, a right honourable, I think, or a lord or somebody. And I remember when I first saw this, I rather liked her. And she doesn't do anything wrong, but it is a very 70s... performance, isn't it? It's a very, very female characters sort of enunciating and being very proper, and I know she's supposed to be a sort of posh time lady, but Rodan doesn't actually do an awful lot. It's nice to have a female character because they are few and far between in the Hinchcliffe era, and Graham Williams era really ups the ante on this. And here we have jelly babies that are jelly babies, and they're the proper ones as well. Those are proper Bassett's jelly babies, I think. And I seem to recall that it takes Chris Trachsel quite a while to eat this one. They're big, hefty ones. I wonder if jelly babies have shrunk. They do look quite big, but they are jelly babies rather than licorice all sorts, as they often are in Doctor Who these days. And of course, the Doctor, I do like the Doctor having his jelly babies. They were very much a part of my understanding of the character when I was a kid, that the Doctor had jelly babies. Although, isn't it funny that we associate them with Tom Baker, but Patrick Troughton is the first one to mention them, isn't he? See, Chris Tranchell doing that. Follow me. He's being a bit sort of, playing a pantomime doofus in a way, which is an object. Whereas I think Milton Johns is extremely funny, but his character doesn't ever know he's doing anything funny, and that is much more my preferred method. And as I say, I don't think Chris Tranchell is bad. It's just that his choices are indicate. I think he's trying to sort of rescue it from tedium in some places. And this is, look, it's things like this, is that we've got a close up of this glove where obviously and uniforms are supposed to be sort of practical, and he's really struggling with these keys. And then when you see a close up of the glove, it's actually the red felt is sort of cut out and not really part of the uniform. It's sort of it's over the leather gloves, and it just all looks slightly tatty. But this is artfully done, because obviously K9 is not coming out at this point, but we have the sound effect, and then we have a cut, and then he's out there because he obviously hasn't been able to get out the TARDIS. But of course, in order to shoot straight, it means he shoots the guy on the palm, and then makes quite a racket. Yeah, it's Doctor Who is very, very tatty at this juncture in its. But then what it has to do is rely on wonderful, wonderful actors. This rather sort of lofty detachment from John Arnott, who is gorgeous, and the obsequious, sly, rather conniving presence of Milton Johns, where he is so polite and yet, obviously up to something, obviously working to his own agenda, and being quite sort of transparent about this, even though on the surface he's obeying all the rules of, decorum and politeness in conversation. But also, look, there's a steeliness there. You know that he means business. You know that he kind of knows the Doctor is up to something. Oh, I love Milton Johns. He is so, so glorious. More Milton Johns, please. You can't go wrong if you've got Milton Johns in your programme. He would be a brilliant Uriah Heep, wouldn't he? And he's got it. You can imagine, you can see why Tom Baker scared directors, because he is fierce. He's a powerful, powerful man. Oh, I bet K9 was delighted with this piece of corridor. It's a lovely. But what is that on the wall? And Louise Jameson is doing good acting to suggest that this is a force field. She's brilliant, isn't she? She just does everything. She just does everything well. That sort of casual way that she was conversing. She's so good. And I have to say, we didn't really talk about this. The model shots in this are very good. Top work. It's Colin Mapson, isn't it? I think. I love a practical model. And this feels like the stakes are getting much higher, because we're on Gallifrey, and we're doing Gallifrey politics, and she says Gallifrey as well. I wonder if it's worth going back and seeing how many people say Gallifrey and how many people say Gallifrey, and if we've been pronouncing it wrong all this time. Oh, we're on film. Something broke there. What was that broke that the guard dropped? But he broke something. You'd probably do that again now, I suppose. In real life, of course, if you were zapped by K9, your gun might break, and he went over the broken bit there as well. Good Lord. But isn't it amazing how different everything looks on film? Just how much more metallic, and look at that. That's K9 zapping the transduction barrier. But this looks great because it's all on film. And they're avoiding showing the laser gun if they possibly can, because it is problematic in terms of direction. Oh, I like the gold usher in his civvies, because the gold usher is not at the ceremony, so he's just all in black and gold, of course. But this feels like, this is Gallifrey. This is inviolable. This is this is the most powerful planet of the most powerful people in the entire lore of Doctor Who, and it's been invaded. So this is, I do feel the ambition of this to say we're going to make the stakes really incredibly high. We're going to return to Gallifrey, but the first time we're going to breach it. That feels like a big step for the show. Now, of course, it then means that, if you bring down your gods, they can they can never recover. But of course, Robert Holmes has already done that politically in a way by making them, for all their pomp and circumstance and high opinion of themselves, they are venal, they are conniving, they are politicians like anywhere else. And, gods are quite boring, but also, and it's harder, and I think it's one of those insoluble problems. Do we keep our gods as they are because they serve a certain purpose, or is that really, really boring? So let's get under their skin a little bit. But then, of course, as soon as you get used to something, as soon as you get too close to something, it takes away that role. It takes away their effectiveness and what they were designed for. So I think it's a really hard one about what you actually do with races like Time Lords, or characters that are designed to be above and beyond us. Well, if you keep visiting us and all they are is declamatory people in robes, or voiceless gods, or whatever, they soon become tedious. But then if you bring them down, it means, does everything have to be down to earth? Does every impressive world or godlike creature have to actually be prey to the same small scale things that we are? Because then you're turning it into another sort of drama, and everyone is small scale and human, and that can also be a bit boring, because Doctor Who is about more than just everybody being like the people you might meet at the shop, or at least in the House of Commons. So I'm saying that I'm not saying I prefer either, but I'm just observing that that's a difficulty when you have, and it's a difficulty particular, I think, to the sci-fi and fantasy genre, is that if you want to get under the skin of your august institutions, you then undermine them. Now, in The Deadly Assassin, the undermining is deliberate. It's part of the point. But then it means that Gallifrey, which, when we first saw it, we didn't know what it was called, this awe-inspiring place in the war games where they just had to look at you and they could disintegrate you, are now, clumsy guards, conniving politicians, venal chancellors, whatever. And so, yeah, as I say, that's merely an observation. What is my favourite thing about episode 2? Well, I do like the fact that Gallifrey is invaded. I think that's pretty sexy. And I think it builds to a climax and is not badly done there at all. I mean, the fact it's invaded by tinfoil is another matter, but we will speak to the Vardens later, I am sure. Milton Johns is wonderful. John Arnott is wonderful. I liked Tom Baker's conversation with K9. I do like the model work. But I think, because he's going to be there at some point, so even if I don't get the point for him now, I'm sure I will get it later. Although there is a moment of his I also want to choose. But I think it's possibly because it's in contrast to the clumsy guards and to Chris Chantrell, I think, doing, understandably trying to inject a bit of something into it, but maybe making the wrong choices because he's seen what Tom Baker's doing and thinks, I'll do a bit of that. And Tom Baker gets away with it a lot of the time because he's Tom Baker. But crucially, he also doesn't always get away with it. He's doing a Shap, really, Chris Chantrell. He's doing a David Harris, who I think is another great actor who gives a who makes a poor stylistic choice in the Armageddon Factor. And I think it's because he's seen what Tom Baker's doing and decided to join in. And I think that's a mistake. I think you actually emerge if you do what John Arnott is doing and give equal and opposite in a way, and then you maintain your dignity, and you're also not trying to compete with him. You're almost helping with Tom's waywardness if you just match it with the kind of performances that John Arnott and Milton Johns are giving. But I think it's the fact that Milton Johns just had to do a scene where he was doing sort of calculatedness with a ping pong ball to his ear and talking a load of old rubbish, and still you know exactly what the character is doing, that he's plotting, that he's thinking, that his mind is ticking away. And because he's a type as well, he's a obsequious yes sir, no sir, but he's also plotting and cunning, and you know that he will swing like a pendulum depending on which way the wind is blowing. That's a very mixed metaphor, isn't it? But this common body, what is it Octavius Caesar says in Antony and Cleopatra, lacking the varying tide, goes to and forth with motion, lacking the varying tide, that it rots itself with motion, I think. He's basically saying, oh, the public will believe any old crap and are fickle, and they will go with whoever's in favour. And Kellner is a distillation of that, but unlike being a member of the public, he is in high office, and he's doing it in order to consolidate his own position every time. And I think he might be the best. Him and John Arnott are the best things about the whole story. And I know I err towards the actors, but when you're looking at the design of this, and you look at the amount of sort of production mistakes and breakages and gaffes and sloppiness, those two actors are really doing so much heavy lifting. So I think I'm going to vote this time, because he's going to get voted for at some time, Milton Johns as Kellner. Shall we see what Nev Fountain has to say?
Hello, Toby. I am currently still on Gallifrey, where it was hidden away from the Daleks during the Time War and renamed Red Hill. The sky is not quite a burnt orange anymore. It's more of a murky grey. I am currently wearing my own Doctor Who scarf, which was knitted for me by my nan when I was 8. We can still see the join where I grew up and had to have an extra couple of feet added so it would trail along the ground. My choice for episode 2 of The Invasion of Time, the clue is here, is the Doctor's scarf. Very odd choice, you might think, since he wears it pretty much every episode. But in this particular story, The Invasion of Time, and it's particularly noticeable in this episode, he wears his scarf very flat on his shoulders. It doesn't sort of fold over like it normally does, like it's on my shoulders. He wears it very flat, and it's like he's wearing it to make it look like a toga. And I think that's a bit of creativity by Tom, because he knows what kind of story he's in. And I like that little bit of creativity from Tom. And I like the fact he wears it very flat on his shoulders pretty much all the way through, but particularly in episode 2. So that's my choice for The Invasion of Time, episode 2, the Doctor's flat scarf.
Well, that's a good choice. I wouldn't have... I mean, sometimes I prefer it, I think, if I don't get the point, and it's because it's a point I would never get. I mean, occasionally people have gone, because I watched this with my friend Oliver and I liked him. And I was like, well, I was never going to choose that. But, yeah, I wouldn't have got that, even though it was staring at me. But it's a good choice. And it does... And I think that is an important observation, because obviously the stuff that works on Gallifrey is the stuff that's a bit like I, Claudius. You know, all those old men. I mean, now I think you would find it unacceptable, because it's loads of middle-aged white guys just talking about stuff. And I can see why, you know, that has become quite stale, particularly to the modern eye. And that there's, you know, and then it's very like, a lot of television of the time. But the thing is, we're not watching it amongst a load of other television of the time. So I think now you can, it's, you mine that for what it's worth, which is very experienced, very good actors. The actors are all sort of behaving as if they're in I, Claudius, and Tom Baker's scarf suggesting a Roman toga. I guess, I don't know if I believe Nev, but I like his reasoning, so I will accept it. That is a pointer towards that. And I, Claudius, of course, was a hugely successful and influential television series. And viewers would have been familiar with costume dramas of that type. There was the Caesars, wasn't there, as well, which was long before. Where ancient Rome was recreated in a BBC studio. Well, here ancient Rome is being invoked in a futuristic manner, but in the same way that I, Claudius, was successful was because they said, oh well, we're gonna we must imagine they're the mafia. There was a modern reference point, even though they didn't give them cigars and go, what about it, Tiberius, or whatever. But you doidy rats, Janus, or whatever. But just in terms of trying to get their head round the interactions, and I suppose trying to get their heads around the interactions on Gallifrey, they've gone, well, imagine it's something that we can relate to, and of course we can relate to a Roman costume drama because they are very familiar to us, and certainly very familiar to the dramatists and drama watchers of the day. So that's a way of grounding and making the sort of court intrigue, if you like, of Gallifrey translate to the audience at home. So it's not a fatuous observation by Nevs at all. I rather enjoy it, and I think it primes me therefore to be cognizant of what some of the qualities of this story are, which are those that as I say, that sort of court intrigue and interaction, and that then feeds into the really successful aspect of the story so far, which is the return to Gallifrey and the machination. Something is going on underneath. I think the Doctor's behaviour this week suggests that we can trust him a bit, because we see him talking as himself to K9, and that fury and that exhaustion that he has is because he is putting on an act and perhaps shielding himself mentally at the same time whilst he's out and about, in order that he can pull off his trick, his subterfuge. And then when he's in the safety of the TARDIS, he can be more like the Doctor that we know and love. So I think we've got an inkling this week, which we didn't have so much last week. So that's good. That's progression. That's taking the audience in different directions, making us think, oh no, actually, I think I can see that there's that he might be up to something here, and that makes you feel good as an audience member, particularly a younger audience member, if you've worked out what the adults are up to. So yeah, I think that's very successful. I think that's a really good part of the story. We're on Gallifrey, something's going on, the Doctor's up to something, and then you have that. But he's not gonna really endanger Gallifrey. Oh, he's got K9 to blow up the transduction barrier and allow aliens access to the home world of the Time Lords. I mean, that is really, really big stuff. Yeah. So I think those elements are all really, really key to the successful parts of this story. Other elements of the production, I think, are working against it. And I wonder if that's the difference between this and Deadly Assassin, which does have its incompetent guards and its funny moments, but it's a more cohesive production, I think. And I think here as well, there's a kind of, and we might impose this because we know they're up against it financially, and that Graham Williams was constantly fighting fire. But there is a bit of a slapdash that'll do about it. Oh, we've got some inflatable cushions. We've got some vacuum-formed plastic chairs, but they're blue and green, and you don't get blue and green chairs on Earth, do you? So let's just stick them in a corridor. That corridor set is awful. But by the same token, the Hinchcliffe era can be a bit dry, and sometimes if I want something that's a bit lighter, that's a bit more bouncy, and that also sort of gives me a laugh because it's, because it is a window into a time when the show had to go on. And a lot of television of that time, is in desperate trouble because of inflation and the state of the nation. The 70s weren't particularly sexy looking, full stop. So it's no wonder that bleeds into its television, particularly its television that has the added onus of having to try and look futuristic. So we can't blame them for that, for trying to overcome the problems of the time, and sometimes a window into those things provides a few salutary lessons. Anyway, that is it for episode 2. I didn't get the point, but I did very much enjoy Nev Fountain's choice. Do check out Nev. He's a skilled writer and satirist, and a very nice man and an interesting mind. And we will see what's going on in the Doctor's mind, because he's keeping some of that from his fellow Time Lords, in the next edition of Happy Times and Places. Until then, I'm putting my transduction barriers back up, and you can all go away. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Nev Fountain. You can find him on social media, on Instagram, for example, at Nev Fountain. I'm grateful to Nev and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible. They include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, Peter Burns, James Curray-Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Tim Arding, Josh Bernard, Nigel Bromley, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Peter Chamberlain, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Paul Dunn, El Pandras, Susie Ferguson, Jason Gorman, Paul Harris, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Ashley Knight, Joe Llewellyn, Philip Marsh, Nathan Martin, Roland Moore, Rick Moran, Kevin Murdoch, Graham Knott, Michael Page, Adam Parker, Barry Platt, Risto Matty Cirillo, Frank Shales, Siobhan Galichon and Ian K. McLaughlin. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name read out on the credits, that is one of the bonuses of being a patron. You can become one of those at patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where for as little as £3 a month, well, you get your name read out on the credits. You don't get it read so often if you pay £3 a month. The higher you move up the tiers, the more often you get read out. But you still do get read out if you pay £3 a month. It's the only punishment, actually, you get for being on the lower tier. Everything else, you get exactly the same as everybody else. Everything of worth, really. All the videos, all the early podcasts, the bonus material, behind the scenes looks at the various things that I do for the Blu-ray and DVD ranges. All of that stuff is available from the lowest tier, and so it's very much a pay what you can afford. But you also get your name read out on the credits at different rates of frequency. But as dear old Siobhan and Ian K, who I both mentioned there, that extends to after death. I don't think I'd put that in writing, but I can't bear to leave them off the list, even though that's two people in one of my tiers who supported these endeavours from way back when, and sadly, since I started the Patreon, which I think feels like yesterday, are no longer with us. So we remember them with affection, and a name check is the least I can do. But irrespective of that, if you would like to give your support in any way, you can do so also by going to wherever you digest these and give them a 5-star review, a few lines of feedback, positive feedback, something for the punters to read to give them an idea what this stuff is about and what you like about it. That's really helpful, more helpful than you'd imagine. So if you haven't done it, if you could, that would be much appreciated, and that costs you nothing but a little of your time. I'm all over social media. I'm at Haydock Podcasts and at Toby Haydock on Twitter. My comedy club is at Excess Malarkey on Blue Sky. I am also on Blue Sky, Toby Haydock, and the variations of that, you'll find it. I'm on Instagram at toby.haydock, and I have a YouTube channel. I'd love it if you could thumbs up, like, subscribe, and do all the things to that. It sounds desperate, doesn't it, saying, please do all of these things, but it's the way that people like me sort of have to get ourselves about these days, and frequently there are fewer opportunities in the mainstream and wider media because they're contracting and they're limiting the sorts of people and the number of people that they use. So this is my platform, and your support enables it not to be a rickety one. So thanks. Right, well, I've got to be very, very brief in this post-credits. Hello, Ashley Knight. I know you're listening. This could be just for you, my white Ashley Knight in shining armour. Because I like to do an end credits thing just because it makes it feel like Crossroads. Do you remember Crossroads? It used to have the credits and then it had the sort of coda scene. But also because I believe in people sticking around for the credits. So I believe in leaving something hanging. I think Marvel do it now as well, don't they, to encourage people to stay in the cinema and to punish people who stand up and start moving as soon as the credits roll. I mean, heads would roll. When I am king, their heads will roll. And it's like when do you remember when you used to hire a video from Blockbuster Video or whatever? Basically, if you watched the whole film, once the film finished and the credits started, it would quite often jump, where, because obviously that's where it had been stopped a lot, or that's where it had been left a lot if people had pressed stop and not rewound it. But the tape would be damaged there because so many people stopped immediately as the film finishes. It's like, you're that desperate to be out of the movie that you can't just even let it play in the background while you talk. I find that, yes, stop crunching the credits, stop. I mean, we don't even really have them anymore. So this is what this bit is for. This is to say, for those of you that stayed for the credits, you are the good people. I'm sure the argument for other people is we've got loads of things to do, and it's only the credits and then you plugging your Patreon and social media, and nothing you do in this bit is worthwhile. So I'm now listening to a True Crime podcast, or another Doctor Who podcast, or one about Blake Seven, or the Tripods, or the Tomorrow People. Because again, it's funny, isn't it? You're the sort of centre of the Doctor Who world, and everything in the Doctor Who world is massive news. But of course, this isn't listened to by more than maximum a couple of thousand people, I should think, in its lifetime. And yet it sees, you worry, oh God, should I have really said that? Look, the amount of people that will notice or care, probably less than a golf podcast, or even a tweet by a git. Oh, they get loads of traction. But there we go. That went from credits to VHSs to social media. So, all the drama in the last bit for an audience of one, Ashley Knight. I'm sure there are more of you, but Ashley just mentioned it this time, so put lead in my pencil. Thanks for the lead, Ashley. Although perhaps my verbal diarrhea is a result of lead poisoning, which takes us back to I Claudius, doesn't it? Because didn't the Romans get lead poisoning from lining the aqueducts with lead? Is that something I just made up? I think that might be a thing. But anyway, let's not get on to history as well. This was supposed to be short. I'm going away. Goodbye.